Ashley, the show is yours.
Okay, well, I want to start today by welcoming everyone. As you may or may not know, this is our kickoff for Careers in Aging Week, and we have some amazing alumni here that I'm going to let them do their own introductions so that we can all learn a little bit about who they are, what we're doing, and then all of you who are telling me you're in Fort Lauderdale and Richmond, Virginia, and DC in the chat, thank you. I am monitoring the chat as we talk. I have my set questions, but if you have a burning question, please place it in the chat and I'll work to integrate those in there. And so for those of you that don't know me, I am Dr. Ashley Stripling. I'm an associate professor here at NSU and I direct the NSU Counseling Center for Older Adults, but you care less about what I have to say and more about what our amazing alumni have to say. So with that, I'll let you guys take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Sarah Henderson. I'm coming from the Little Rock, VA here in Arkansas. I will say if you've never been to Arkansas before, you should come and visit. It is a hidden gem in the United States. So I work here at the Little Rock, VA in home-based primary care. I graduated from NSU in 2018, and I've been at this job since I graduated. I did not take a fellowship. I just went right into the job market here. I'm also the diversity coordinator for our internship program and our fellowship program here. And I'm excited to talk and share about home-based primary care.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Tara McBride-Afonso. I'm a NSU alumni, as you all know. I graduated in 2015. Went on to do internship at the Cleveland VA. So hey there, whoever put in the chat, they're in Cleveland. Fond memories there, wonderful city. I went on to Boston to do my fellowship, the Boston VA. And after I finished, I went to the private sector to work at assisted living facilities and long-term care facilities, doing half in-person and half telework, which really prepared me for last year, which was really fortunate. Right now, I'm a full-time staff psychologist with VA Boston in the home-based primary care program. I'm a supervisor for our fellowship program in geropsychology within home-based primary care, an instructor for Harvard Medical School. And I also serve on our disruptive behavior committee, as well as our accreditation committee and quality improvement committee for VA Boston. So welcome.
I'm happy to jump in if that's okay. I'm Dr. Neil Kenny. I'm a proud graduate from Nova Southeastern, 2005, and I did my undergraduate at University of Connecticut and completed an internship and residency at the Miami VA. And since 2007, I've been the staff psychologist with the Miami VA home-based primary care team.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Lisa Taylor. I am a clinical psychologist at the Bedford VA in Massachusetts, so me and Tara are neighbors. I graduated Nova Southeastern in 2016, then went over to Cleveland VA as well for internship, and postdoc was at the Bedford VA, where I currently work, in between being hired as a full-time HBPC / CLC psychologist. In the CLC, I work in our dementia units as well as our geriatric psychiatric unit. I worked for the private sector for some time before coming back to the VA. I am on multiple committees, including our LSTDI committee, our hospice committee, and actually a few other committees, including fall committee. And the list kind of goes on, our SMART committee. But yeah, they keep us busy here at the VA. So I look forward to talking to you guys and hearing some of your questions.
Excellent. Well, I am honored to be able to share the virtual Zoom void with such illustrious alumni. And I think the first question I have for everyone is the question that I often get asked, obviously working with older adults, Careers on Aging Week. What made you interested in pursuing a career in aging? What brought you to our field?
Well, I can say I was interested in, of course, becoming a clinical psychologist and particularly interested in health psychology. And during my second practicum at Nova, I did a rotation in the Managing Movement Disorders program and working with patients and caregivers of those with Parkinson's. And that was an introduction to geropsychology in a sense, because so many people with Parkinson's happen to be in the geriatric population. So from there, it was a matter of kind of surveying what opportunities were there and how they matched up with my own interests and ambitions. So when I saw that the Miami VA had a geropsychology specialization, and reading over that training brochure, it just seemed perfect. So I went for it, and then I did geriatric neuropsychology during residency, and that really lined me up for a career in home-based primary care. So I've heard the saying that luck is when preparation meets opportunity, and luckily I did a lot of preparing, but then opportunities also presented themselves as time went on.
Dr. Kenny, thanks for sharing. Yes, it looks like a lot of the hard work that you did in your graduate training just came to fruition, that the VA happened to be hiring in home-based care jobs, right place, right time, but you had to work to make it happen. Thank you for sharing. And I think Dr. Taylor had unmuted. She was going to share as well.
Hi. So I feel like I kind of have an interesting entrance into geropsychology. So I came into Nova Southeastern University initially interested in sports psychology, which you probably think sports psychology, what does that have to do with geropsychology? Well, not a lot. I was I was very involved with our sports psychology program at that point in time, doing research, working in the clinic, working with Dr. Lusso, who I'm pretty sure isn't there anymore, but I'm sure someone has replaced him. Hopefully that clinic's still running. And that was my main interest. And one day, as you know, practicum sites kind of come along and we're told where we're going to go. And I got put into COA. And I remember being kind of devastated initially, thinking this has absolutely nothing to do with what I want to do with my life. I want to be a sports psychologist. Like, yes, I want to work in health. So that's kind of why I put NACOA on there. But this has nothing to do with what I want to do. Like, I know what I want to do. I'm sure about this. And I was still working in sports psychology the whole time. But then when I started working in NACOA, I started working with the population, and I realized how different they were from the athletes that I was working with. Whenever I worked with an athlete, I give them homework, they do the homework, they follow the psychoeducation I was providing them, they get better. I discharge them, I move on, same thing, next thing happened, exactly the same thing. They were amazing patients. They're used to listen to instructions, following instructions, and doing what they're told. And they were pretty intelligent, given the fact that they were in college. And so then I worked with this geriatric population, which, you know, was completely different. Every single gain and win I got, I had to work for. And that was something I appreciated and, you know, loved, and it made me think. And, you know, after doing sports psychology for the 3 years that I did it in grad school, I kind of felt like, okay, well, I've done this and it's not really challenging me anymore. And you know what is challenging me? Geropsychology. And they never stopped challenging me. They still challenge me every single day. And that's what I love about it. It's that it was something that I knew I could continue to grow with and develop throughout my career. And it wasn't easy work. It was hard work, but it was quality work, and it made me think in ways that I didn't have to necessarily do in other venues of clinical psychology. And that's got me hooked, and that's why I never plan on leaving geropsychology.
Well, wonderful for happy accidents and changing our population of interest. As you were talking, I was just watching the panel. I can't see all of our attendees, which is a little bit different for me because normally I watch everybody's faces, but I was watching just all of the panelists just shake their heads and agree with you. And I will agree, like the work is very challenging and very rewarding. And I don't know if Dr. Henderson or Dr. McBride also, if you guys have felt the same way, that like in deciding to pursue a career in aging, you've experienced experience those, like working really hard for those rewarding experiences as well.
Yeah, I was definitely one of those shaking my head saying, yes, yes. Similarly to Lisa, I also rotated in NACOA, and Michelle Gagnon-Blodgett was there at the time. And really, I entered grad school thinking I was going to be a forensic psychologist, which we all know how great the forensic program is there. And then the only other thing I really knew was I do not want to work with children. I want to have them one day, but I don't want to counsel them. So that left, I ended up in NACOA, which was also not my first choice. And I just really loved the work. I loved the intersection of, cognitive assessment and mental health and the medical piece of it, the whole health psychology, and also worked in the fall prevention clinic. So the interdisciplinary piece, and then also providing consultation in the the geriatrics medicine clinic over in that other building across campus. And I really just love that because I could see myself that no matter where I ended up in Gero, there was always going to be something new, and that it wasn't like what Lisa was describing, kind of that revolving door of highly motivated patients, which is great for some people, but that just wasn't what was going to keep me interested. So I love this work. It's challenging, it's interesting, it's rewarding, it's just wonderful.
Great to hear. Great to hear. Dr. Henderson, did you have a similarly, I guess we're building two career paths here. There are people like, I think Dr. Kenny, did you know that you were going to be a geropsychologist from day one, or did you kind of end up in NACOA by chance as well and you got hooked?
I had actually, I think with the Managing with Movement Disorders program, and also I was a graduate assistant for NACOA. So by the end of that year, with the work and the training, I was absolutely comfortable in geriatrics. It was such a rich and a diverse and fun population to work with. So I just found it very, very rewarding.
So you also got hooked, I guess. Dr. Henderson,
yeah,
were you hooked? Were you hooked too, or did you know what you were getting into?
No, I have a very similar story. I did not think I was going to do gero work. I came into Nova. I worked with Dr. Van Hassel for all 4 years and was really interested in doing trauma work and working with police officers and firefighters. And what got me interested in gero is 2 things. I did a practicum at a rehab center and really loved how medically complex patients can be, and loved seeing them having that melting of like psychology, the medical piece, working in an interdisciplinary team. And so I was kind of going that route, more health psychology, maybe more rehab. And then as I continued my work with firefighters and police officers, I realized that there was such a gap in their care post-retirement. And so that kind of got me interested in aging and kind of their adjustment after their career and how they have such a difficult time with that piece. And so that led me to the Little Rock VA for internship. And I ended up doing all gero work here. And my first rotation was in home-based primary care. Absolutely fell in love with it. And I was like, this is what I want to do forever. Until I'm 85, I want to be a home-based primary care psychologist. And I absolutely love the work here. Just kind of piggybacking my words too. Piggybacking off of what everybody said, I just love the medical complexity and that it is such a challenge and you never know what you're going to get. You never do. So it's great.
I agree. And one of the things that I'm hearing from the panelists is something that I'm always telling students. It's no matter what your identified area of interest, like older individuals likely are struggling with the same thing: trauma, health complexity, neuro, forensic. Like you want it. We have it often all at the same time in the same one person. So it's the same client that has all of those complexities. And Dr. Henderson actually gave a beautiful segue saying that she loves doing home-based care, that she wants to do it until she's 85. My next question is for those maybe our panel or attendees who are unaware, what does like the typical day look like for you in home-based care? Or I know Dr. Taylor has a CLC home-based care kind of mashup. And so what does your day-to-day look like? I recognize this is an unfair question, so just give us a ballpark.
You go ahead, Lisa.
So I was just going to say one thing to back up on what we just said. I have the saying, but I know I say it all the time. People hear me say it all the time, but I always say to be a good geropsychologist, you have to be a good generalist psychologist, a good health psychologist, and then a good geropsychologist. And so, I always think of that as exactly as you're saying, like you have to be good at everything to be a good geropsychologist, but that also means you get the opportunity to treat everything and have specialties on top of that, which makes it even that much more interesting and complex and rewarding at the end. In regards to what a typical day look like, it's a mashup. You never know what you are going to get. Any day could be something completely different. I'd always love to say like I schedule times where I'm like, this is my home-based primary care time, and this is my CLC or long-term care or dementia unit times. But you never know what's going to happen any day, and those things are constantly shifting. I do schedule probably most of my appointments same day because of the constant shift of what's happening with my patient's health, with what's going on in the units, with figuring out travel as we travel sometimes an hour and a half away. And if you're driving an hour and a half to see somebody and there's someone else that needs to be seen that's close to them, you're going to try to squeeze them in because it's challenging. It's challenging to get to some of these guys and gals, and you have to be flexible in your process. I also, outside of the VA, work in a group practice where I have telehealth appointments all day scheduled, and I never veer off my schedule to that. And it's so bizarre sometimes doing that, where everybody has their scheduled appointment to my normal day in HPPC, which is, or even my normal day at the VA, which is, I do a little bit of everything every day, from team meetings to home visits to inpatient to consultations to working on different committees or doing program development research. All of that in one day is a normal day, and how it looks is different every day.
Yeah, I would say similar to what Lisa was saying is that, every week and every day looks different. A typical pre-COVID kind of day in home-based primary care, just for context, I cover like the north part of Massachusetts and also north of Boston. So I travel pretty far, and usually I see about 3 to 5 in-person visits. And as Lisa said, like clustering them in a certain town or just in the North Shore of Boston, or maybe more up towards New Hampshire, just to kind of ease the drive time and maximize it. I'm a little more structured, I think, and that's just my personality. So when I leave a home visit, I schedule my next visit with them. So if I'm seeing them every other week, then I'm going to be on the road every other week with most of the same people. And just, it seems to work that way for me. But also now with COVID, we do a lot more virtual care. So like the last 2 weeks, I saw 8 people between Monday and Tuesday, both weeks. And then I had like probably 6 other virtual visits during the week. And then this week is much more free time. I have scheduled writing time because I'm writing a manuscript. I had 2 visits today that were virtual, a team meeting on Thursday. And I also have time to have those committee meetings, and we have a faculty meeting planning for fellows and interns to start and planning out rotations. So some weeks I'm supervising and I'm in the car with the fellow for 8 hours. So it is pretty flexible, and I like that. So, we make our own schedule, which is nice. And also it can be stressful at times, but mostly nice.
I'm just blown away by the sheer amount of planning that it seems like you all have to do to just have a day where it's flexible, where somebody's like, we need you to go see this person who's an hour away, and you have to get in the car and squeeze that into an already packed schedule, which is phenomenal. So I think, as Dr. Kenny said, this preparation, allowing you to be ready for this opportunity or this moment where it happened. And I don't know if Dr. Kenny or Dr. Henderson, you guys want to add in anything about your day-to-day life that looks a little bit different. I saw you nodding as well, as Dr. Taylor and Dr. Tara. How would you, is it MA? What would you like? I'm trying to keep us formal by using doctor, but should we just do all first names?
We can just do first names. Okay. I go by Dr. McBride. My married name's Afonso. Most people put an L in it, so it's a whole thing. So we can just go with Tara. It's much easier.
We've broken down the rules. So this is. So for those of you who are watching, I actually have some connections with some of these panel members. So Neil was actually one of my supervisors when I was on internship, and Lisa was headed out to internship, and we overlapped with 1 year of my last clinical training. And the idea for this panel actually came up because Tara and I believe Sarah and I were on a Building Bridges conference that focused on aging training, or Lisa, we're on this training, and I was like, hey, you guys are amazing alumni. I've looked at your CVs. You're doing amazing things. Can you come and talk to us about what amazing things that you're doing now and what other things that you think the future of Gero might be? And they all graciously agreed to volunteer their time. So that's where we are now, which I've taken us on a segue, but I promise I'm going to be circumstantial and not tangential and get us back to the point, which Neil is laughing because he's my supervisor, so he taught me that. And so I guess, Sarah or Neil, do you guys have anything to add about your day-to-day life that for you has just been really kind of a standout experience? And if not, I'm going to stack my questions. Really bad clinical practice. If not, do you guys have like a career highlight? It seems like you're all really prepared, you're all running places, and I'm sure that's led to such amazing clinical moments.
Sure. I mean, as far as typical day, I echo in a sense what everybody else said. And it's very important to balance being flexible with being structured and planning as much as you can. But what I call jokingly the 4 basic food groups with Miami VA home-based primary care, everybody gets an intake evaluation when they first come into the program. There's time-limited psychotherapy, and I emphasize evidence-based psychotherapy when I can, when it's clinically indicated. There's consultative liaison services. There's more thorough assessments, which are typically more neuropsych in nature, dementia rating scale or R-bands, the NMPI when it's warranted. But I could be doing any one of those things or all of them at any given time, anywhere in the entirety of Miami-Dade or Broward. And it's just an interesting setting to work in, because if people are coming to you in a clinic and there's a cancellation, you might say, oh, now I have an hour to catch up on some things. But when there's a cancellation for me, it's, oh, well, now I need to drive 40 miles in the opposite direction to see that other person. It's an adventure every day.
I would say, and this might be a little bit different from you all, but we are outside of Little Rock, is pretty rural. And it sounds like y'all have some great resources, or potentially great resources, because you're next to these big cities. And Little Rock is the big city, but it's really not that big. Coming from, Fort Lauderdale and Miami, where I did some training. And so I would say maybe one of the differences here is that a lot of my work, I do kind of joint visits, or I'll piggyback on some of the other providers on our team, like social workers or nurses or dietitians, because a lot of our veterans don't have resources because they're in these really rural communities or extremely small towns, or just out in the sticks. And so I think that's something that I really enjoy about this work, is being able to work with those patients that maybe don't have the same resources as some of the veterans that I do see in the bigger city of Little Rock. And so just when you were talking about kind of career highlights, or maybe what is really interesting or what you love about your job, I think that's one of the things I really love about home-based primary care here, is being able to work on that interdisciplinary team, work with different resources in their local communities as well as the VA, and truly make like a big difference. I think some things that we take for granted is just, you can just see the difference in people when they're hooked up with these resources, or when they come onto our program and have all this help from nurses, dietitians, our MD, and what services we can provide. I really love that about home-based primary care. And I love being in a rural setting as well. I enjoy driving. So I think that might be one of the things you have to like about home-based primary care in order to be a home-based primary care psychologist. It sounds like everybody else on this panel is well organized. And I would say on one of my days pre-COVID, this poor intern that was with me, I was covering for one of the other psychologists that was off, and we kind of covered different areas of Arkansas. And I think the furthest I travel is almost 2 hours away from Little Rock. And we had to go see one of her patients, which was like way up here, and my patient was way down there. And so I think we spent about like 6 hours just driving in the car and doing supervision, seeing 2 patients. But it was a good experience, and it just shows you just don't know what you're going to get in home-based primary care.
Yeah, I'll share. I don't know if I would consider this a career highlight. I think it's more of something that I love here, and I hear a lot, just kind of echoing off what Sarah said about working on an interdisciplinary team and how wonderful it is to be able to offer a full primary care team plus occupational therapy and physical therapy and dietetic services. And just our veterans are just so grateful for, us being able to come into their home because they can't get into the VA, and being able to connect them with services like Meals on Wheels and elder services for home health aides, getting them therapy in the house, adaptive equipment. Our physical therapists help with, completing grants to get renovations to accommodate whatever needs they have. And really just the other day, 2 weeks ago, I was in the Lowell area and meeting with a veteran who I think he's been on our panel for about 2 years now, almost, or a year and a half. And he's recently come into some financial stress, and didn't want to talk with his family about it. They live about an hour away. And he was just really embarrassed by what had happened with his finances. He's cognitively intact. We were worried that something was going on cognitively, but thankfully there wasn't. And we helped him connect with the local veteran service officer and elder services for a money manager. And he was just so grateful. And he said to me, my family wants me to move near them, but then I'll have to give up my VA family. And I think a lot of these veterans really do at times see us as an extension of their family. We oftentimes see them more, especially during the last year with the pandemic. We were the ones who are masking up and shielding up with face shields and going, into their homes and still trying to provide that care as much as possible, even if it's just the nurse, but keeping them from being so isolated. So I really love that part of the job, is hearing the difference in the veterans and the feedback that they give us.
I really appreciate what you said, Tara, because I think that is one of the difference I've definitely seen in the Gero world, but also in home-based primary care, is that relationship that the team members and as a psychologist build with the patients and their families. I just don't think that you can maybe have that same relationship because you are going into their home, which makes it so unique, rather than being in like a sterile office, doing like an SUD or the PTSD unit. That patient is coming into your office, and there's a power differential there. And I think when you're invited into somebody's home and you're providing services there, it definitely is a different feel, and it's a different environment. And we attend our patients' funerals. We have stayed in contact with caregivers of veterans over the years. They still send our service Christmas gifts and baked cookies and things like that. And we really do become family to a lot of these people. And so I really love that about my job too.
Lisa and Neil, I'm seeing you nod along as Tara and Sarah. You're like, yes, they're taking the words right out of our mouth. That this is what we're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all of that, and I can say a career highlight, which is actually one of the biggest challenges for me personally. But when I started, I hadn't anticipated how much of a role of advocate and protector I would play, and I haven't kept track. I don't have any hard numbers, but I don't know of anyone who's made as many protective service calls. So when you find that some of these situations that are rather unfortunate, there's also a tremendous amount of reward of being able to identify it and shine a light on it and intervene and help to lift somebody up and support their safety and well-being. So I think that's been a real highlight for me. And also to be able to work on an interdisciplinary team and to have a nutritionist, social workers, and physical therapists when there's an unsafe home environment or a lack of food or a lack of access to the community or services, to be able to work as part of a team and make it all happen together. It's a challenging but a very, very rewarding experience.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it seems like you guys are wearing a lot of hats. You're advocates, sometimes soul connection for the veterans that you serve, or kind of maybe part of a team that is a new VA family for the individuals that you care for. And we've all been through a lot in the past year. And I don't want to, if Lisa has something to add about a career highlight, I don't want to live her space. But I'm wondering, as you guys have shared this, you're at various stages in your career. And so, and at various opportunities, I heard as during introductions, you guys are involved in so many different areas, kind of diversity, kind of research, kind of coordinating other teams and other VA initiatives. I'm wondering kind of where you see the future of home-based care going, and will it still be able to include all of these like remarkable just connecting moments that you guys have all described?
So, I think in regards to the future of home-based primary care, I think that's something that we're constantly thinking about with our team, meeting the veterans' needs or our patients' needs. And as time goes on, we know the geriatric population is just going to increase, but also with that, the geriatric population is shifting to a different geriatric population. Not that I have multiple World War II 100-plus-year-old veterans on my caseload, but now I'm seeing much younger veterans kind of coming onto HBPC, and younger I think is relative when you're working in the field of geriatrics, but we see people sometimes in their 50s with comorbid health concerns and their early 60s, and that's a much different population than our 102-year-old veteran. And I think it is very dependent on each and every person, as I have 90-year-olds that are very in tune with telehealth and iPads and all of that. And then I have 50-year-old guys that are like, no, I'm not going to deal with that either. So But I think there is kind of, as Tara was saying, especially with the pandemic and that being an introduction to telehealth, that there's going to be aspects of that. But I never want to lose. I think with home-based primary care, I think there is something so vital about like providing in-home services and never wanting to lose that aspect of home-based primary care and having that face-to-face connection with providers that they wouldn't be able to obtain otherwise. I think that's so important to so many of these veterans. And I think even above that, I think the world of geropsychology is constantly changing as the world is constantly changing in regards to kind of connecting with others and learning more about geropsychology. I know our just general outpatient clinic at RVA is kind of overwhelmed with the geriatric population at this point of time, and not everyone is necessarily trained in geropsychology that's seeing the geriatric population. So I think kind of on a more broader sense of the field of geropsychology, I think there's going to be a lot of training to generalists that are working with the geriatric population in order to meet the demand that is coming quickly. And that I think is an interesting part of geropsychology that's not necessarily fully being addressed at this point of time. And I feel like no matter if you are interested in geropsychology or if you have absolutely no interest in geropsychology, it's important to be educated because there's a good chance you'll be working with some form of geriatric patients in the future with the way the population's heading. And, that I think is what we think about a lot. I actually, myself and one of my colleagues recently started an Instagram that's to do outreach to other geropsychologists providing education, outreach to regular psychologists providing education, outreach to caregivers to just even let them know like geropsychology exists, because a lot of people don't even know what it is or that it exists. And so that's something that, is something that we're starting to develop and look at and think about how we can continue to outreach and maximize education about geropsychology as times change.
Moving to meet the new demand. Yes, I know that when I was leaving the VA and the training that I did there, that's a lot of when the baby boomers were kind of coming in. And so we were getting a lot more younger, older adults. And I'm sure that you guys have seen kind of a continued shift in your demographics. I recognize we had a question for the panelists that asked if home-based care was just gero or it was integrated. And Tara responded, but she responded to panelists because Zoom meetings is weird. And so I'm just going to read out your response, Tara.
I can if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
So yes, so within the VA home-based care, typically our admission criteria, and this can vary, is usually veterans who are homebound or have a great difficulty getting into the VA to get their primary care, and have a skilled nursing need, because it is a nurse-driven program. I see a lot of nods, so I'm assuming that's pretty standard. So sometimes those veterans are younger, because they have physical disabilities or other reasons why they are not able to get into the VA, but most often they're older adults that are having the trouble getting in. So inherently it's gero, but it's not like a specific, if you're not 65 or older, you can't be admitted.
Are open for a large patient population, but the catchment area for checking all of those boxes for homebound and needed skilled nursing, and to skew a little bit older. We have had such a fun time talking. I'm recognizing it's 12:40 and we were going to open up for general questions in about 5 minutes. And so the last question that I have for you guys as panelists is we have a lot of current NSU students who are on. So they might be in the same position that you guys were at some point in your training, thinking Gero is not for them, but they maybe had a class with me and I told them they should come today for, I don't know, a point of extra credit. And so they're here. And so my guess, what I would like to know, I know Lisa touched on this, that we need a lot more individuals to do this, even if you're just seeing one patient that's older. It might not be your whole career, but we need everybody to touch on it. And so what advice would you have for our current students who are maybe either interested in Gero or haven't thought about pursuing a career in the area?
I mean, I can jump in. I would say, because it's difficult to kind of get practica at Nova, and I try to explain this to a lot of people because it's the lottery system. It's not easy to get what you want. That I think it would, we have opportunities in the community to volunteer, to get face time with, maybe it starts with spending time when you feel safe or comfortable with your family that's older, if you aren't able to do that, or talking with great aunts or people you don't really know, but really having more exposure to older adults. Because I think, I know in our country that ageism is a huge problem. And as a geropsychologist, I still have some ageist beliefs that sneak in, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should check those biases before I approach this case or this person. And I think that opportunities to volunteer in the community at a senior center or even at a long-term care facility with their recreation department, there's a lot of different ways to interact with seniors at different stages of their aging process, whether that's at end of life or that's when they're retiring and they're engaging in more activities. I would say just get in contact with people that are aging, and have an open mind, because as you've heard from all of us, once you do, you might find that you don't want to work with anyone else. So, I mean, that's the best advice I could give.
Thank you, Tara. I saw a lot of nods. Do Lisa, Neil, Sarah, do you guys have any other advice?
Yeah, I think along the same lines, that older adults are in a lot of clinics or in a lot of areas. It's not always like this is, like a children's clinic. And so you're just going to see, people that are under 18. Just like at the VA, if you're doing a practicum, say in neuropsych or or at a substance use clinic or something like that, ask to see those older adult patients. That's something that I did on internship, and in some of the practicums I did at Nova. I said, I'm really interested in this population. Give me the older adults, send them my way. And so I think that's a great way to kind of carve out that space for you to be able to see that population. And also when I was at NSU, I had several jobs outside of being a student. And so I think in the community there, you've got a couple rich opportunities to be able to see older adults doing work outside of your graduate training. So I would encourage you to look into those opportunities as well. I think they help prepare me well for the job I'm doing today.
Excellent. So 2 votes for getting involved and wonderful places to get involved. Lisa, Neil, do you guys have any other strategic advice before we let you?
I was just going to say, at the very least, geropsychology at this point in time is going to provide you with a great amount of job security, with the continuously changing population. There's only a greater need every day. And so, that's one thing to provide comfort in the future is if you have training in geropsychology, I think if you had training in geropsychology, you just decide you wanted to do it because it's so wonderful. But if you have training in geropsychology, you have job security for the future. And there are, there are plenty of opportunities for geropsychologists coming up on the daily, and and in the VA, outside the VA, and it's a great opportunity for future clinicians. So it's another plus to be had.
Join us. The water's warm. Come on in, right?
Exactly.
Neil, do you want to, I'm seeing some questions coming in the box, but Neil, do you want to give us your advice? No pressure.
I certainly agree with what everybody said. And I would definitely say that the geriatric population, we would be here all day if we were quoting statistics about how things are projected to look in the future. But it is a rich and diverse and rapidly growing, rapidly expanding population, and a very a great population to work with. So and if you're at the stage where you're training and you're not sure what you might want, or you're open to things, or I would say the geriatric population is definitely worth giving a try, and even doing some volunteer work someplace just to get some hours in and get a feel for it, or trying a practicum or doing an internship rotation. But at least with interns I've had in home-based primary care, I've said, learn everything you can, and I hope you have a great experience, but I guarantee you will never forget it.
Yes, the experiences are pretty unforgettable, whether good or bad, right? I'm recognizing some questions are coming in, and so I will tell you there's a plug to volunteer for those our current NSU students, the Lifelong Learning Institute, which is a great opportunity. And then we have a question from someone who runs an age tech startup and is also a marketing student here at NSU that has a question for us about what should tech founders in this space think about when approaching with older adults. And so I know you guys have talked about using pre this, we talked a lot about using multiple different formats to connect with each other and with patients. Any advice for this marketing student tech founder?
I think there's probably going to be a significant amount of research coming out about this soon. As I know there's going to be a significant amount of research coming out about this soon.
Lisa, are you publishing something you should tell us about?
Not yet, but there's been a ton of grants and a ton of things happening in relation to adapting to what older adults are comfortable with. So I think a lot of us expect older adults to just adapt to the way things are now, and a lot of them are not planning on doing that. And so the thing about technology is that it can easily be adapted. And instead of necessarily forcing a population to adapt to us and the way we do things, we need to be a little bit more creative and adapt it to them and the way they are comfortable doing things. So for example, right now with insurance, you can bill for telephone calls versus VVC or like face-to-face connections, for the fact that a lot of our older adults, one, either don't have access to an iPad, even if we can get them access to an iPad, don't have an email address, and don't plan on starting an email address or learning how to use the iPad. So figuring out how to adapt technology that they are already comfortable with to them would be my best suggestion at this point in time.
Thank you, Lisa. I saw some nods. Is the rest of the panel in agreement? We are in agreement. Yay. I have another question in the box about COVID-19. I think Tara brought up, we're all living in a society where ageism is prevalent and raining down on us. The reason that we're doing a careers in aging panel, the reason that we're selling Gero so hard is that we all know it's such a rewarding experience from working with elders for a pretty significant portion of our career, but looking at where we all started, there was maybe some bias that worked into whether we wanted to do this long term when we first started our profession. And so we have a question in the box, which is, with the current pandemic and with COVID-19, do you think that there will be additional stigma about older adults and concerns for them or their families or for individuals working with us?
So I feel comfortable talking about this. I would 100% think that is the case. You know, I see it within my own family. I see it within the VA, but so many family members are even scared to meet with their grandparents in fear of getting them infected, and understandably so, and in some quite respectively so. But I also fear how that affects, you know, the well-being, their connectedness to others, and what other like side effects there are going to be from social isolation as this continues, and then they get out of the pattern of doing things like family dinners or visiting their grandparents, and even hopefully knocking on a lot of wood as things open up and or change, that those things might no longer be a part of their patterns, and therefore they just say, oh, a phone call was fine, or something like that. And you know, I think that very much does affect the day-to-day life of older adults when they very much rely on a lot of that connection to others.
Yeah, and I also think that it is, I don't know if it's hard to say. So what I'm trying to say is I think that the pandemic has, in some ways, kind of reinforced ageism in some ways in thinking about the terms that we've used to describe it, or not we maybe, but as a society have used to describe the pandemic. I think something like the boomer eraser, or just kind of devaluing older adults' lives as they're dispensable or just not important. And I think that in that way, it definitely can reinforce the ageism and the stigma of aging. And I also wanted to speak a little bit to what Lisa was saying about the impact of the pandemic on our older adults. I've seen many more older veterans for anxiety, health anxieties, anxiety related to COVID, social isolation, sleep disturbance. A lot of my veterans were very active and got out and drove and went into the community and went to the senior center and would go to Market Basket, which is our local, now I realize my audience is our Publix in like Massachusetts, New England. And they would socialize. And now over this past year, I have people saying, well, I fall asleep for a 3 to 4 hour period in the afternoon watching TV because I'm so tired. And then when I go to bed at night, I wake up 4 hours later. And they're like, what is happening? Like, I have insomnia now. And it's not, it's just this disruption in their normal routine where they're people are more stimulated and interacting during the day. And then, they're able to sleep at night. But when that gets reversed, it's really hard to get it back. It's not an easy task. And I think that it definitely has impacted our older adults in a pretty serious way. And for a lot of reasons, like Lisa was saying, some people wanting to protect their family members, and rightfully so. But that also comes with consequences. I can't tell you who, but someone said to me one time that everything in life comes with a debit and a credit. And I think that really speaks volumes to a lot of the things that we've all been experiencing, and however we compensate and have helped our patients through it, there's a debit and a credit, even on our own side with self-care.
I agree. It's been a big year for everyone, and it's required a lot of change. And I recognize we're approaching the end. We only have about 5 minutes left. Can you tell that we're all psychologists? We're like 10-minute warning, 5-minute warning. We're counting down. We're making sure everyone is aware of our boundaries and our limits. And within these past 5 minutes, I've seen. I want to see if we can end on a more hopeful note in the resilience, because I do agree that with everything Tara and Lisa have been saying, that this has been a really hard year for us, a really hard year for our clients. And I can tell you, clinically supervising students in NACOA, so many of the hook that got you there, I am now in charge of. And one of the things that I have consistently seen is, even though this has been hard, and even though technology limitations do exist and our older adults are experiencing higher levels of psychopathology, as face it, we all are. The general void is not a pleasant place for us to be. I've also been honored to be in the presence of such great resilience, especially for older adults who have lived through hard things in their life before, and they have been, even though they don't want to, maybe been able to pivot and change and do a telephone session instead of coming in, or keeping themselves safe. And I guess to end, I'm wondering if we could all share a moment over the past year where you guys saw maybe resiliency either in your own life or the life of your clients in an unexpected way that might give us a little bit of hope as we move forward with Gero in the future. Because I do think that as we open up and come back, we're going to see both the good and the bad, both those credits and those deficits. And so I think it's important to acknowledge them both.
I can say personally, I was really taken by and inspired by the power of the established relationships that we had with our patients, that for years we had been knocking on the door and helping them out and helping to sustain them in their home and in the community. When if our program wasn't there to do that, there's a good chance they wouldn't be in their homes or be helped out the way they are. But I had heard, as the lockdown started and as the year progressed, I was always calling. I was on the phone, checking in, calling people on a quarterly basis. And I thought it was really something that, they remembered and cherished everybody in every call. But they would say things like, my life hasn't changed all that much because I haven't driven in years. I've had my groceries delivered for years, but now no one's knocking on the door and I miss you guys. So it was nice to hear that helped to carry them through, and the phone calls and the reminders and the encouragement. And now, even though we're suited up like astronauts when we walk through the door, we're knocking on the door again and we're keeping them as safe as possible again. So I think, the resilience and perseverance and the dedication from the team, and even the humor that a lot of our veterans have had about the whole thing. You'd walk in the door all suited up and they'd say, "Oh, are you going to the moon after this?" But so that I found to be a positive thing with all of this.
I think one of the things I've enjoyed most seeing, and it doesn't happen, for all of our patients, but for the ones that do kind of embrace technology or that are willing to learn, I think it has opened doors for them to connect with family that maybe they wouldn't have been able to before. I have multiple patients that are now like, "Oh, I FaceTime my grandkids today," and I got to see my great grandbaby instead of just like a telephone call update. They're able to see them on video, and really kind of embraced that. I think has done wonders for our patients. And I will say, there was hurdles for us as well. I remember, thinking when we started this pandemic, I'm horrible at technology, and we're supposed to be great at technology, being like younger, and having to use it all the time. And so I'm thinking, how are we going to get these patients up and running with these iPads or CBT tablets and showing them how to connect? And I remember one of the first 2 months of the pandemic, I spent 45 minutes on the phone with one of my 92-year-old patients, getting him connected through VVC, just telling him, there should be a little arrow on the side, and then you click that and it drops down and you select Arkansas. And just thinking, if one of us, if I wasn't there, if one of the nurses wasn't there, working outside of our quote unquote psychology, box, and helping somebody for 45 minutes just to connect via video, it would never happen. And so I appreciate the opportunity that I've had to wear different hats and to help these veterans then long-term connect through video to other providers, to other family members, and really taking that time instead of just saying, well, this is not my job, just call IT and, we'll go from there. I think I really enjoyed seeing them adapt and be able to use it outside of just with us in home-based primary care.
It seems like the credit to the whole deficit component that Tara so adequately gave us credit for is good growth, that you guys were really there for your patients before, and now all of your planning and adaptation and preparation has allowed for some really successful opportunities. Now, I recognize it's 1 o'clock and we are done. And so on my agenda is a call to action. And so for those of you that are still with us today, thank you for joining us to learn a little bit more about careers on aging, geropsychology, and big round. You guys, I know they can't hear you, but they're out there in their little voids clapping for you. Round of applause for our panelists for sharing their wonderful experiences. And if you have any questions or would like to connect, feel free to chat us in the box. But thank you all for coming and sharing your experience. It's been a pleasure to spend an hour with future geropsychologist. It's always kind of nice, right, to take a break and hang out and connect. It's and to hear your stories as well. So thank you very much.
For my
yes, go Lisa, go. You put your Instagram in there, but you just sent it to us panelists. So can you send it to if you want all of us on it? If you don't,
so if you don't mind sending the Instagram, so it's the Golden Gerocycles at
I will send it to all of us. So a quick plug. Anything else?
So I'm going to throw a quick plug in there. It's not my podcast, but there is the geropsychologypodcast.com. I'll put it in there. It's Dr. Lindsay Jacobs and Dr. Rachel Weisskittle. They run the Geropsychology podcast. It's awesome. I got to interview on there, which is exciting. So that's the plug part, but it's only one episode about telehealth. So there's lots of other really cool stuff. You can hear about what other geropsychologists are doing. And then when you become a geropsychologist, they'll interview you too.
And it's great if you're in home-based primary care because it's something to listen to while you're driving to see your patients.
Exactly.
Good for all of us. Oh, thank you for those amazing resources. I'm always looking to integrate things for students. So thank you so much for sharing. Any other plugs? Sarah, Neil, album dropping next week that we should be aware of?
No, I just wanted to say a sincere thank you to Ashley and to Carlos Perez and to my fellow panelists. This has really been a treat. And thank you. Thank you all.
I agree. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I appreciate meeting you all. And I hope everybody out there really, truly considers getting their feet wet and try and do it.
The water's warm, right? We're pleasant people. You get great colleagues.
It's sunny and 75 in Gero. Come on
yes,
over.
always sunny and 75.
With a chance of showers. No, just kidding. Thank you. Good to see everyone.
Good to see you too.